James Brisione is a celebrity chef, cookbook author, culinary instructor, and two-time champion of Food Network's Chopped. Now, he's sharing the surprisingly simple techniques of sous vide cooking, so you too can enjoy restaurant-worthy dishes in your own home.
I'm James Brisione. You'll master the fundamentals of sous vide cooking, allowing you to get perfect results for chicken, veggies, and more. Sous vide isn't only for fine dining. It's a refined yet convenient way to cook at home. I'll demonstrate the process using eggs. We'll butter poach salmon, a technique that you can use for any fish. Next, we'll begin vacuum sealing with chicken and then sous vide fruit. Finally, you'll learn why sous vide vegetables just taste better. By the end, you'll be ready to dive into this unique but simple cooking technique. So you may have heard of sous vide cooking before, but what exactly is it? It really comes down to precision cooking. We use a water bath to precisely control the temperature at which foods cook. Now, sous vide directly translates to under vacuum, but you don't necessarily have to vacuum seal foods for sous vide cooking. In fact, I'm going to show you lots of great recipes that don't require any vacuum packing at all. And with sous vide cooking, we're going to be operating at a temperature range that's much lower than you're used to. We're going to be between 50 degrees and 85 degrees Celsius, which translates to about 122 Fahrenheit to 185 Fahrenheit. So why do we cook sous vide? Think about a hard-boiled egg and a soft, runny poached egg, and how much variety there is in between those two levels of doneness. With sous vide, we can really zero in on a specific level of doneness and get that result every single time. So let's get cooking. 63 degrees is my favorite temperature for a poached egg, and I want to show you guys how we get there. You're starting with eggs. This is really, really simple. There's only two steps to the sous vide process when you're cooking eggs. Cook and finish. So to cook the eggs, and they're going to cook for 45 minutes in your water bath here. Now that may seem like a really long time to cook an egg, but what we're looking for is an equilibrium temperature. So that means that the water is going to be the same temperature as the center of the egg. That takes a little while for the egg to get there. You always want to put your eggs in a colander basket of some sort before they go into your sous vide bath, especially if you have a circulator like this. It's going to have the water moving around, right? Because if they're not in there, eggs are banging around inside and you're going to have the grossest looking egg drop soup you've ever seen in your life. So we drop the eggs and that's it. We're now cooking eggs sous vide. I always like to keep my baths covered. You can do it very simply with plastic wrap like this. You can have a lid that fits it. But this just makes sure that the water doesn't evaporate. If we run out of water, then we're not cooking anymore. But you can see with this process how easy it is to cook these in large batches. I just put 4 eggs in there, but a dozen eggs would take the exact same amount of time, or 2 dozen. So if you're throwing a big brunch party, this is the perfect way to cook. Now, you can see on my circulator, as I put those in, I lost 1 degree. So I'm now down to 62 degrees on the circulator. That means I'm not going to start my 45-minute timer until this heats back up to 63 degrees. That's an important thing to always watch out for when you add food to the cooking bath. If you're adding something big or things that are really cold, you could lose some temperature. Always make sure to adjust your timing accordingly. So as soon as this gets up to 63 degrees, and you can see we're nearly there, we'll start the 45-minute timer, and then I'm going to have a perfectly poached egg.
The immersion circulator is one of the most important pieces of equipment for sous vide cooking, as it regulates the temperature of your water cooking bath. Every machine has a line for minimum and maximum water. It's a good idea to check these because when you add food, there will be some displacement. There will also be a readout of the set temperature and the actual temperature of the water bath. By setting the precise temperature, you're able to reach the exact level of doneness that you're after.
Hollandaise is probably one of my most favorite sous vide discoveries. I've actually figured out how to make hollandaise with nothing more than a mason jar. No stress over emulsifying, no worrying about getting your double boiler just to the exact temperature, and no last-minute preparation. This is a brilliant, simple technique that I'm really excited to share with you guys here. It starts like a traditional hollandaise, making your basic reduction. So we're going to begin adding some white wine to the pot and white wine vinegar, So that's going to build the great base of acidity that's going to help balance out all of the richness in your hollandaise that comes from the egg yolks and the butter. Next are all the aromatics. So we start with some minced shallots. We're going to add those in. And then for a standard hollandaise, bay leaf, peppercorn, and thyme. Now, if you wanted to make a béarnaise, you just add a little bit of tarragon in there, go through the same process, and finish off with a little fresh tarragon, and you'll have a beautiful béarnaise. But now, all of our ingredients for the reduction are into the pot. We're going to let that come up to a boil and reduce until just about 1 ounce remains. That's about 2 tablespoons or so of liquid. It's going to take probably close to 10 minutes. So we're going to let this simmer and reduce, and then we'll start making hollandaise. So you can see our reduction is done here. We're down just to about 1 ounce of liquid. And all we have to do now is strain this into the jar. Get rid of all of those shallots and the herbs. They've done their job. Okay. And now we put all of the ingredients for hollandaise together in this jar all at once. So to my reduction, I'm going to add the egg yolks. That's 5 egg yolks going in there. And the butter. Butter goes in all at once. This is the brilliant part of this recipe. Like I said, you're not going to have to worry about emulsifying. We just add all of the butter into the jar. And this is 2 sticks, so it can be a little bit of a tight squeeze. Don't be afraid to press it down in there. Squeeze it all in. And then we put the lid on the jar. Now, you want to make sure that the lid doesn't go on. So if you tighten it all the way, turn it back just a tiny little bit like that, so this isn't sealed too tight. What can happen is there's going to be some gas created during this. And if the jar expands too much, we might have some major problems going on in that bath. So just leave it a little bit loose. Okay, so now we've got all the ingredients for hollandaise in the jar. You've got your reduction, egg yolks, and butter. So I'm going to go back to my trusty colander and set that into my water bath and then drop the jar right into that. Now that comes right up to the top edge of the band, which is fine as long as the water doesn't go over, because remember, leaving that lid a little bit loose could allow water to come in. 15 minutes this cooks. We take it out and blend it right inside that jar. We're going to have the most beautiful hollandaise and the most effortless hollandaise you've ever seen. Okay, so 15 minutes later, our hollandaise is just about ready. We go ahead and turn off the machine and carefully remove my jar. Now, don't worry that this looks like a complete mess in the jar right now. That's the way it looks when it's done, but in just a few moments, it's going to be beautiful hollandaise. Now remember that this is really hot in here too, so use a towel, use tongs as you need it to handle. You're gonna find most of the melted butter up to the top, and the reduction and the egg yolks are all gonna be down on the bottom. So when you blend, you wanna take your immersion blender and push it all the way down to the bottom of the jar, and then begin blending. I'm just going to hold it there at the bottom of the jar until I see that thick hollandaise starting to rise up to the top, and then slowly pull the blender up to incorporate all of the remaining melted butter. And you just made hollandaise. Look at how beautiful and how simple that is. I've done this a lot. It still amazes me every time that it works. I'm convinced one of these times it's not going to work on me, but it hasn't failed yet. You can see what a beautiful consistency this has. Now I'm just going to finish off the seasoning. A little squeeze of lemon. A bit of hot sauce. It's your choice. I like something with a little kick. I'm going with some sriracha here. And then a good pinch of salt. Okay. I'm going to take all of that and just mix it in. As you can see with the consistency here, we've got a beautiful finished consistency on that hollandaise. I think we're looking great. So now we're ready to take this hollandaise and plate up the classic Eggs Benedict. So I've already got my toasted English muffins and a little bit of fried Canadian bacon. I'm going to come back for my favorite 63-degree egg and a little trick to get rid of that loose egg white that can be a little watery, a little runny on the edge of the egg is just to simply crack it into a slotted spoon. So I set that up over a bowl, and carefully, there it goes, crack that egg right onto the spoon. If you get a little break like that, and sometimes that's going to happen, that's why I always cook a couple extra eggs. So I'll save that one for me and plate up one more beautiful egg here. So if you see, right, we can slip it out gently there. Now really that's all of that loose white has dripped away there. So we roll that onto the spoon, let that last little bit come out through the slots of the spoon. We drop that right onto our classic Eggs Benedict setup, and then finish it off with that beautiful, simple hollandaise. Classic brunch dish with the simplicity of sous vide. Don't worry about emulsifying. Don't worry about perfect poaching technique. The machine's going to help you pull this all off flawlessly. Now you'll see just how quick and easy sous vide cooking can be with fish recipes that are ready in just 20 minutes. So we're going to begin with our sous vide fish. Now, why sous vide fish? Because if anything begs to be cooked at a very gentle temperature, it's fish, especially nice cuts of salmon. Fattier fish do so well with that really great gentle cook. And by having a precisely controlled low temperature, we're going to get incredible results. The method we're going to cover today with the salmon is a great method for all fish. So you can use this for your favorite cut, whatever it may be. If you like halibut or cod or anything else, even a sole or a flounder, all work beautifully the same way. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions about sous vide is that it's something that always takes a really long time. In fact, this fish cooks in just 20 minutes, so this is definitely quick enough to make for a fast weeknight meal. And one of the great things about salmon, or really any cut of fish, is you don't even need to vacuum seal it. I'm going to show you a great trick where we just simply clip a bag to the side of our water bath and we're ready to go. So we're going to begin this salmon recipe with a simple brine. This is your basic wet brine. It starts with water, then kosher salt, and sugar. Now this is of course the most basic it can be, and because it's such a quick brine, I usually don't even bother adding any aromatics to it, but if you wanted to add some spices or some citrus zest or anything like that for a little extra flavor, you could certainly do that. One of the main reasons we want to brine the fish here in a good strong brine like this is we're actually lightly curing the surface. Now that's going to prevent albumin from forming on the surface of the fish as it cooks. You may have seen that white pilly stuff that forms on the surface of a fish, especially something like salmon when it cooks, and we see that a lot in sous vide if we don't take steps to prevent it. And this brine is the perfect thing to do that. Now of course it's also going to season our fish. And so we want to take our 2 portions of salmon here and drop them into the brine. So those just need to be in there for 20 minutes. So we're going to leave those to brine while we set up our cooking bath. Okay, so it's been a quick 20 minutes here on the fish, and they're done brining. Now, if you didn't really care too much about the appearance, and if there was a little albumin on the surface of the fish and that didn't bother you, and you just want to get this done quick, you could simply season the fish, put them right in the bag, and get to cooking. You could also do this brining really at any point in advance. If you had a spare 30 minutes, 20 minutes and wanted to get the brine done and then just keep them in the fridge until you're ready to cook, that's perfectly fine. Once they come out of the brine, I just want to pat off all that excess brine so they don't end up too salty after cooking. Okay, so those are nice and dry. Now we're going to open up our bag and slip in the 2 pieces of fish. 1 and 2, and then our butter goes right in along with it. And now the beauty here, we talked about the economy. This is a very small amount of butter to make a butter poached fish. We would need a big pot going on the stove to make this happen with a traditional cooking method. But because we've got everything enclosed in sous vide, we only are using a small amount of butter. And I like to tuck a couple pieces in between the fish like that to make sure they don't stick together. All we have to do, now this fish is ready to cook. Don't worry about sealing the bag. We're just going to clip it right onto the edge of the cooking bath. So we go right into the water. And as we get that in there, I want to take some tongs or something to press this down to make sure that water closes in all the way around the fish. So as that butter melts out, it's going to fill in all of the space around the fish. And that's what allows us to use this method here. Now you have to have some kind of a liquid or fat in the bag to use this great little clip trick. But you can see as the butter is melting, I'm watching the air bubbles move up from the fish and come up to the top of the bag. That's going to create a great seal, and again, it's only 20 minutes. So as soon as that's done, we just pop this out and the fish is ready to eat. So our 20-minute cook is up. This really could not be any easier. And again, because this is such a quick cook and we're going to eat it right away, we don't have to worry about that sealing of the bag. So you can see our fish is perfectly poached here, and it looks fantastic. Now I've got a warm tray here for the fish to rest on and stay warm while I prepare the sauce. You know, remember, this fish is going to be really, really delicate as it comes out, so you want to handle it very gently. So perfect and lightly cooked. So now, again, you know, I love to do this and kind of blend sous vide with traditional cooking methods. And we're going to make a classic sauce crème glace here. So what I'm going to do is actually just pour this butter out, sort of carefully leaving some of those solids behind until I have just enough to get a little bit of a roasted butter going on. It's going to lightly brown, which is going to give it some great flavor. I'm going to keep my fish covered here so it doesn't cool off too much while we work that sauce. Rich butter and salmon flavor coming out of this pan. It really smells great. I'm looking to just get a nice light amber color on the butter, and we're just about there. And now as some of these pieces firm up, we can scoop those away and discard them. We don't need to have those in as the sauce, and we'll skim around the rest of them. Okay, last little bit here on the sauce. This looks great. We're going to throw in some diced bread. The heat is off now. And capers. And I want to get that bread just nice and golden brown and toasted in this butter as it cooks. All right, so toasted bread, and then we finish off with some fresh chopped parsley, a bit of lemon zest, and the lemon juice, just to balance out the richness of all of that butter. So these, butter and caper and lemon and parsley, these are fantastic flavors to go along with the salmon, and that toasted bread gives us just a nice bit of crunch and a little bit of texture. We're going to give a last little pinch of salt. Okay, and our sauce crème glace is ready. Now, to plate up the salmon, we've got a little bit of cauliflower puree that we prepared earlier. So we go right to the plate with this. And then come back for these gorgeous, delicate pieces of fish. And carefully lift those up. And finally, finish it off with our sauce crème glace. Okay. All that beautiful butter runs all over the place, mixes with that wonderful cauliflower puree. Just finish that with a couple of pieces of fresh parsley. Absolutely fantastic dish, and this could not be any easier to make. 20 minutes in the sous vide bath, a couple minutes in the pan. This is a beautiful meal. Weeknights, you're gonna love it. Now we'll take a look at vacuum sealing techniques and see how low temperature cooking leads to the most tender and juicy chicken and pork you've ever tasted. We'll cover dry brining, which really enhances the texture and juiciness of sous vide proteins, vacuum sealing, which is needed with longer cook times, and a few different searing methods. So, why sous vide chicken? Because everybody overcooks chicken, and sous vide chicken is going to be the juiciest, most perfectly cooked chicken you've ever had. It's so different than a traditional roasted bird. It's my absolute favorite, and when I introduce sous vide cooking to people, this is typically where I start. We've got two cuts here. We've got a boneless chicken breast and boneless chicken thigh. Now, typically it's best to cook chicken sous vide without the bones. One, the bones can pierce the bag, and two, leaving bones in often leads a little bit of extra color in the chicken, which can make some people uneasy. Now, typically you leave the bone in chicken for cooking to help keep it moist, but this process is going to keep it more moist than anything you could ever imagine, so the bone is really no longer needed. Now, before we cook chicken at all, one of the things we want to do is a special seasoning that I call the herbed brown butter.
Start by placing 1 pound of butter in a pan over medium heat. This recipe makes a large batch that you can store in the freezer for future use. Cook the butter until lightly browned, about 1 minute past clarification. You want all the milk solids to settle onto the bottom of the pan to become nice and toasted. Once you reach this stage, lower the heat and add 6 cloves of smashed garlic and some fresh sage, thyme, and rosemary. Then turn off the heat. As it cools, all of those aromatics will infuse into the butter, creating a delicious roasted herb flavor.
Okay, so now we're ready to roll the chicken. Now, again, this is another step that's not necessary, but I really love the way it looks, and I think it serves incredibly well when we roll this chicken thigh and get a beautiful crispy brown skin all the way around the outside. So I'm going to grab a little bit of plastic wrap here and set this up at my station. And with my boneless chicken thigh, the first thing we want to do is season it. Now, I've got the seasoning mix here that I like to use for all white meats. This is a dry brine. It's really just a simple mix of 2 parts salt to 1 part sugar, and it acts just like a brine, but again, it goes on dry and really enhances the texture and the juiciness of that meat as it cooks. Okay? It's really quick. We don't need to worry about soaking for a long time or brining. I love the way this works, especially for chicken. So now, take a bit of plastic wrap here, pull it all the way out across your board, and you're going to take that seasoned chicken thigh, lay it right out on the plastic wrap. I'm going to use my brown butter here and just drizzle that all over the meat. And again, that beautiful, roasted, herby, toasted flavor is going to infuse in the chicken as it cooks. Cut off that plastic wrap. You could also use aluminum foil to roll these and shape these if you wanted to, whichever you're more comfortable with or you have on hand. But this is all about shaping, right? So you see as we roll this over, pull a nice tight cylinder of that boneless chicken thigh, squeeze it tight, and then continue to roll it all the way up, keeping that nice and tight. Now we're going to take each end here and twist that up to keep that great cylinder shape. Okay. Now this is ready to cook. Now, I do still like to seal these in the bag. This is really important to pull everything very tight. In fact, there's always going to be a little bit of air trapped in here, so it's not a bad idea to take the tip of the knife and just pierce it a couple times to let out some of that extra air and prepare it for the sealing. And slide this into our vacuum sealed bag. I've got another one in there already. And then we're going to seal these up and be ready to cook. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at cooking the chicken breast. Now this is a different preparation because anyone who's roasted a chicken before knows that really the breast and the legs require 2 different cooking times. And really, ideally, 2 different cooking temperatures. That's exactly what we're going to do here.
Season the chicken breast generously with the dry brine salt and sugar mix. Then torch the skin to get a nice light pre-sear. This step isn't essential as you'll be searing the chicken again once it's cooked. However, a pre-sear will help the breast crisp up and brown easier once cooked.
So we've got a very light sear now on the chicken, and that's really all it needs. Now right before we put this in the bag to seal, we're going to give it a little bit of that brown butter as well. And this is going to be a very light drizzle here. We don't want to have too much liquid in the bag. Alternatively, you could take this butter, chill it down, and then just cut a little pat of butter to throw into the bag along with it. To get this ready for sealing, again, we want to bend that bag back so we keep a nice clean sealing area. And we're going to drop that chicken right in there. Now, why do we want to vacuum seal the chicken here? You know, vacuum sealing mostly is about creating the airtight seal inside the bag to make a very efficient heat transfer. Without having any liquid in this bag, like melted butter or wine or stock, we need the heat to conduct directly from the water bath to the food. And if there's a little bit of air in here, that's going to really change how the food cooks. The top is sealed here, and now we're going to bring this to our sealing machine. And we're just going to slide this right up. And you let the machine do its thing. Now, most of these machines are great. They have preset cycles and functions. You just choose whether you're sealing a dry or moist item, and it will sense when there's a good tight seal. And you can see this really looks nice, a little bit of brown on the skin showing through the bag, but we've got a good tight seal all the way around. So this is ready to cook. Chicken breasts are going to go in a water bath set at 62 degrees Celsius, and that's going to cook for just 30 minutes. Okay? We see that bag go in, and it's immediately starting to head towards the bottom of the bath. That's another great sign. If there were any air trapped anywhere in that bag, of course it would float. Now we're going to seal our chicken thighs and get them into cooking. So our chicken is done cooking. The thighs have had 2.5 hours at 66 degrees, and the chicken breast, after their 30-minute cook, I just turn this down to 60 to keep them warm while the thighs finish up. So they're ready to come out now. Grab these out, and remember now that these, even though they're not seared, are fully cooked. The breast looks great. We're going to get these thighs package here, and then we're going to just snip the ends of the plastic wrap. You can see all that beautiful butter that's inside that package just gave the thighs such great flavor as they're cooking, and there they are. Now, we want to make sure before we do the pan sear that we get these really nice and dry. So I've got some paper towels here ready to do that. So this butter is really hot now. I'm just going to grab a little bit of salt, and that's going to help get that beautiful crisp exterior as we sear this chicken. Lightly salt all of these pieces, and they're going to go right into that nice hot butter. Keep the heat up nice and high, and just a good quick sear. That skin's going to brown up beautifully, and we're ready to go. If you find any spots where the color's not great, you can grab a spoon and just do a little bit of basting. I think this breast is looking really nice here, and we've got that really super flavorful brown butter. I'm going to lift this out, give it a moment to rest, and then just finish off these thighs, tilting up the pan so they kind of get down in that butter. Make sure we get all sides really well browned. We're going to lift these out and come right back to the rack. Again, a great thing about having sous vide meats is when they came out of the bag, they were fully cooked, so we don't need separate stations for before and after searing like you would with traditional cooking. Okay? Those still, of course, need just a moment to rest after the sear, so we're going to let those hang for just a moment. I'm going to start my plating on the chicken with a bit of this beautiful butternut squash puree. I always love that fancy restaurant swoosh. One of the great things about cooking sous vide is it gives you a little extra time to make really, really beautiful plates, and you're always getting these incredible restaurant quality results on everything you cook. So I love to cut this beautiful piece right out of the center. That's where all that great browning is. Now, these scraps are still delicious. You can use those for anything. You can slice them up. They can go into a salad, save them for sandwiches, or just put the whole breast on the plate. You don't have to make it so fancy. It sure does look good like that. Same thing with these thighs. We're going to slice in right around the joint of the thigh. You might see a tiny little bit of color left. Don't let that bother you. It's perfectly fine. A couple of these slices. I tell you, this meat is so flavorful and so tender. Just absolutely incredible. You are going to blow people away with the way all of this chicken comes out. No one's going to have ever tasted anything that's as tender, as moist, and as flavorful as this right here. So we've got all that down, that beautiful butternut squash puree, And then we just want to finish off with a few nice little picked herbs. If you want to make a small little salad or something to go with this. If you buy a whole chicken and break it down yourself, or if you have the butcher do it for you, save those bones and make a little chicken stock with it, and you can reduce that down to finish off with a little bit of sauce. But I tell you, for a fresh, light, beautifully cooked chicken, I absolutely love the way this turns out. I know you guys are too. Sous vide chicken 2 ways, with butternut squash puree. Really don't get much better than that. Fruit may not be one of the first things you think about when you think of sous vide cooking, but there's some really great things we can do by cooking fruit sous vide. One of the most important things is that we're going to get really unique textures and really precise doneness by cooking at different temperatures. We're not just roasting or simmering, but we can lock into a specific temperature, and really the methods that we're going to cover today can be applied to any fruit. We're going to look at some red wine poached pears to begin, and I've already got my wine simmering over here. This is a really cool technique to do sous vide because number one, we use a lot less wine than you would for traditional cooking. Plus, by keeping the wine sealed in the bag, you're able to reuse it time and time again, always making more batches of pears. So I've got my wine simmering here. This is just a kind of a standard Pinot Noir, just through a cinnamon stick, some black peppercorns, a bit of star anise, which is optional, but I really love that flavor, and then some vanilla extract. Of course, you could add a fresh vanilla bean or a whole vanilla bean if you want, but the extract really works great. And then, of course, we need some sugar in there as well. We're going to let that simmer together for a little bit. Now, we have to start this on the stovetop because we are going to seal it in a bag. And if you just dumped wine into the bag with the pears and spices, you would still have that raw alcohol left after the cooking.
While the red wine mixture simmers, you can prepare the pears for sous vide. Start by peeling 4 pears. You can leave the skin on, but by removing it, you'll get a beautiful red color as they poach. Next, trim the base and slice them in half. Then, remove the stem and scoop out the core. Place the pears and wine mixture in a heat-safe bag and seal using the displacement method. The water pressure pushes air out of the bag, ensuring the pears are completely covered by the poaching liquid. And then they're ready to be cooked.
Now, really high temperature bath here, 85 degrees Celsius, again that's 185 degrees Fahrenheit. We need those high temperatures for the proper cooking of fruit and vegetables. Close this up because evaporation is going to be a really big concern when you've got high temperatures like this. You want to make sure you keep your pan really well covered so the water level doesn't get too low. And now these need just about an hour and a half and they'll be all ready to plate up into a beautiful dessert. So these pears have finished cooking and all of those spices in there smell absolutely incredible. We're ready to plate this up. Now I poured off just a small amount of the poaching liquid and reduced that down to nice syrup consistency to have that for plating. Okay. And we're going to plate this up. We're actually going to use a little bit of the sous vide creme anglaise. Look how rich and creamy that creme anglaise is. It's absolutely fantastic. So creme anglaise in our pretty little dish there, and I'm going to pull out one of these pears. Make sure all my spices stay behind. And drop that guy right in there. Now, another great part about this technique is now I can cool these down and just put this whole bag in the refrigerator. Keep them there and open it up. Anytime I need a pear, I just pull one out, and then when all the pears are gone, well, I'll just fill it back up with fresh pears and cook it again, right in the same bag, right in the same wine. So our pear and anglaise, and then finish off just a little bit of this beautiful reduced wine syrup. And that's a really fantastic little dessert. Hope you guys like it. Sous vide is a beautiful way to cook vegetables. You're going to seal in flavor, nutrients, and minimize the amount of fat that you add to them, plus preserve them at the peak of freshness. We're going to cover the simplicity of preparations, really letting the vegetables shine through, and see the intensity of flavor that comes with that. Let's take a look at how first we cook asparagus. And this is the simplest of all the techniques, and it works really great for any variety of green vegetables. All we need to do is take our sous vide bag, line our asparagus right up in the bag. Just add this whole bunch right in here, and then spread them out so we can get into pretty much a single layer for more even cooking. And these are going to cook very quickly. We're not at a boiling temperature, but we're at 85 degrees Celsius. So that's going to take them through this process quite quickly. Butter goes into the bag, and then we use our special seasoning here. This is something that I like to use on a lot of vegetables, especially the green vegetables. This mixture of salt and sugar that brings out some of the sweetness in the vegetables and gives them a really great intensity of flavor. We're ready to sous vide. That's all it takes. Seasoning, vegetables, and butter in a bag, and we're ready to go. So we're going to seal this first, and then we're going to take it to the vacuum sealer. So you can see we've pulled a really nice tight seal here on the asparagus. These are ready to cook. 7 minutes in the bath, and we've got perfectly fresh steamed asparagus all ready. Okay, so our asparagus are ready. But one thing you may want to look out for when cooking vegetables, especially something that's really light like asparagus, is sometimes there's a bit of air trapped up in the vegetables and the bags will tend to float. So if you need to use a tool like that to just weigh it down during the cooking process, that is perfectly fine. Do that, and sometimes, especially with something like asparagus, you may need to do that if you have a little bit of float in the bag, because there's just so much air in those vegetables and the asparagus isn't really heavy enough to pull it down all the way. Okay? But these are ready. A quick 7 minutes. Now, if you're not going to serve these immediately, it's really important that you get them directly to an ice bath. Otherwise, you're going to lose the beautiful color on the asparagus. And then you can reheat them at any time. You can quickly warm them back up in a saute pan, throw them on the grill, or just drop them back into some warm water very quickly for serving. But the smell of this is amazing. They're incredibly fresh. So I think just a fantastic way to cook these, and I really love to serve them just directly out of the bag, just like this. So we get that asparagus there, and then I'm always going to go back to grab a good spoonful of those really well seasoned buttery juices and just baste that right over the asparagus. And there you have it, beautiful sous vide asparagus. And remember, this is a great thing to prepare ahead. They can be reheated at the last minute for serving. They're going to be fantastic. Now we're going to make a beautiful beet salad by cooking the beets sous vide. So here you see we've got some nice, smaller sized beets with a little bit of the top left attached. We're going to season these very simply. A little bit of olive oil, some white wine vinegar, a good pinch of salt, and a little bit of pepper. We want to just kind of toss these, get them nicely dressed with all of that, and then we'll save this for actually dressing the beets after they've been cooked as well. So when those beets are coated with all of that, we're going to just drop them into the bag, add a little bit of fresh thyme, and a bay leaf. Remember, save this dressing for later. And so now we're ready to seal the beets. And you'll notice that I didn't even really bother peeling them. They're actually going to be a lot easier to peel after they've been cooked. So just throw them right in the bag with the skins on, and you're ready to go. So we've got a great seal on the beets here, and these are ready to cook. Now, we'll probably see the biggest variations on timing for the beets because they can be such different sizes. Remember, with sous vide cooking, the temperature is determined by the type of item that you're cooking. Vegetables, all 85 degrees. But the time is determined by the size of the item. So those are ready to go in. Beets are usually nice and heavy, so even if there is a little bit of air in there, they're going to go right down and they'll be cooking beautifully. So we'll check in on those guys after about 90 minutes or so and see if we're ready to make our salad. All right, so these beets are really nice and tender now after just over 90 minutes in the bath. So we're going to pull one out and show you guys this great method for peeling them. All right, so these beets, of course, still have the skin on, just like the way we put them in. Now you're just going to take a paper towel and see that skin just wipes right off. So easy, right? Way better than trying to peel them ahead of time. So you're going to do that. I typically use a paper towel for this. You don't want to mess up one of your kitchen towels unless you're like really into tie-dye or something, and then, go nuts, have fun. Okay, so we get those beets cleaned up. You see all the skin comes right off, and then these are pretty big. So I'm going to slice them into quarters, and then these go back into the bowl, right? This was the bowl that they originally dressed in. I've still got that same vinegar and oil in there. And then if you want to get some of those really flavorful juices out of your bag, get those in there as well. Season these up again with a little bit of fresh salt and pepper. And then we're just going to toss those up. So these look great now. You see they get coated with that fresh vinegar and oil and some of those juices. Makes a wonderful dressing for the beets. And now we're ready to plate them up. Okay, so we're going to start this off with just a little bit of yogurt right on the plate. And then we drop our beets right on top of that. You like that? Dropping beets. Okay. Hopefully somebody's laughing out there. Okay, so love that. And then I really love pistachios with beets. Gives a nice little color, nice little texture. So we sprinkle in some pistachios and then finish off with some fresh herbs. Here I've got a little bit of dill, some celery leaf, and flat leaf parsley. Okay, if you want to crumble a little bit of goat cheese or some pecorino on top of that too, of course that's going to be fantastic. But this is just a great way to cook beets, and of course you use them however you'd like. I hope this has gotten you excited about sous vide cooking and inspired you to go out and try these recipes and all these techniques yourself.
Next time on Tasty Techniques, join award-winning food writer Michelle Ciccolone as she serves up a range of flavorful slow-cooked dishes. Learn her secrets to slow-cooking gorgeous tender chicken, lamb shanks, and even dessert. To access all Blueprint culinary classes and delicious recipes, start your free trial on myblueprint.com today.